Spangles hit British shelves in 1948 when sweets were still on ration from the war. Mars made them in their Slough factory, and these hard-boiled candies came in a square shape with a dimple pressed into each side. The original lineup included strawberry, blackcurrant, orange, lemon, lime, and pineapple, all wrapped in foil-lined rolls. What made Spangles clever during rationing was they only cost 1 ration point instead of 2 like most sweets. This helped them take off with buyers. Over the years, Mars added varieties like the Fizzy range and Old English, which included traditional flavors like licorice and mint humbug. The packaging got a groovy makeover in the 70s with bell-bottomed lettering. By 1994, though, sales dropped and Spangles disappeared. Woolworths brought them back briefly in the 90s with flavors like tangerine and Old English, but it didn't stick and they vanished for good. Rowntree Mackintosh launched the Texan Bar in 1975, and it earned a reputation as one of the chewiest chocolate bars ever made. This one had chocolate coating over nougat and toffee, but the real appeal was how difficult it was to eat. You'd bite down and your jaw would be locked in combat with this thing for minutes. The advertising showed a cartoon cowboy who gets captured by bandits and asks for a Texan Bar as his last request, then chews it so long his captors fall asleep and he escapes. Sure as a mighty chew became the slogan. Kids loved it because it lasted forever, though mums and dentists hated it. Some people actually pulled loose teeth out on these bars. Rowntree discontinued it in 1994. It got a brief re-release in 2005 but never came back properly. Pacers were mint-flavored chewy sweets made by Mars that started life under a different name. They began as Opal Mints in the early 70s, plain white spearmint chews that nobody got excited about. Around 1976, Mars rebranded them as Pacers and added 3 green stripes down each sweet. The wrapper had green and white stripes too, which became the whole identity of the thing. They were soft and chewy with a strong spearmint taste. The TV adverts were brilliantly daft, showing people in white suddenly getting green stripes after eating one. Mars discontinued them in 1985 for no clear reason. Opal Fruits were square chewy fruit sweets that launched in the UK in 1915. They came in 4 flavors: strawberry, orange, lemon and lime, and blackcurrant, each one wrapped in a colorful wrapper. The tagline Opal Fruits made to make your mouth water was absolutely everywhere on British telly. The name came from a competition, with opal referring to gemstones because the colored sweets resembled different gems. In 1988, Mars rebranded them as Starburst to match the global name. The thinking was straightforward. One name worldwide meant one marketing campaign which saved money. It's like Marathon becoming Snickers, another Mars rebrand that annoyed British shoppers. The actual sweets never changed, just the name on the packet. Treets showed up in the UK during the 60s and came in 3 varieties. You had a candy-coated button with different fillings depending on which packet you grabbed. Yellow was peanut treats, blue was toffee treats, brown was chocolate treats. Each one had that glossy glazed shell on the outside, and inside the peanut and toffee versions, you'd find milk chocolate around the filling. The chocolate treats were flatter and just had milk chocolate inside. Mars marketed all 3 with the slogan, "Melt in your mouth, not in your hand," borrowed from their American M&M campaign. The point was, you could carry them without getting chocolate all over yourself. By 1998, Mars discontinued them. Chocolate treats had been replaced by minstrels, and peanut treats got pushed out when M&Ms took over the UK market. Banjo first showed up in the 1950s in Greater London as a wafer bar similar to Kit Kat, but it didn't last and was pulled by 1954. Mars brought it back in 1976 with a big television campaign, and this time it went nationwide. The relaunched version was a twin bar in a navy blue wrapper with bright yellow text, looking a bit like Twix from the outside. Inside you had crispy wafer fingers with a nutty cream filling and a layer of chopped roasted peanuts, all covered in milk chocolate. There was also a coconut version in a red wrapper. The bar did well through the late 70s and early 80s, helped by a catchy jingle that went Banjo, Banjo the one for you and me. By the mid-80s, though it had vanished from shelves, probably squeezed out by competition from similar bars like Twix and Drifter. Cadbury launched the Aztec in 1967 as their direct answer to the Mars bar. The formula was straightforward: nougat and caramel covered in milk chocolate, basically the same idea Mars had already nailed down. It came in a deep purple wrapper and was marketed as a feast of a bar. Cadbury went fairly big with the advertising too, filming television commercials on location at an actual Aztec pyramid. Despite the effort, the Aztec never really took off. The Mars bar was already too established, and people knew what they were getting with one. For 11 years, Cadbury tried to make it work, but by 1978 they pulled the plug. Sometimes being second to market just means you're too late. Fry's Five Boys was a solid milk chocolate bar that first appeared in 1902. The wrapper showed 5 photographs of one boy's face with different expressions moving from desperation through pacification, expectation, and acclamation to realization. The boy was Lindsay Poulton, aged 5, when the photos were taken back in 1895 by his photographer father and grandfather. Fry's paid £200 for exclusive rights, a huge sum then. The bar itself was divided into 5 segments. Each segment had one of those faces stamped into the chocolate. To get the desperation shot, the grandfather used a cloth soaked in photographer's ammonia around young Lindsay's neck to induce tears. By the 1960s, someone tracked Poulton down in Rhode Island, and he was genuinely surprised his childhood face was still selling chocolate 76 years on. The brand got absorbed into Cadbury, and the bar disappeared in 1976. Toffo started as Toffo Luxe back in 1964, made by Macintoshes in Halifax. The name changed to Toffo in 1975. These were flat-topped rounds of chewy toffee, individually wrapped in waxed paper and sold in tubes. The standard version came in a red tube with gold lettering straight toffee flavor. You could get the assorted one in a blue tube with strawberry, banana, chocolate, and original, or there was mint in a green tube. The texture was the thing, properly chewy stuff that'd glue your teeth together if you bit down too quick. Macintoshes merged with Rowntree in 1969, then Nestlé bought the whole operation in 1988. Toffo carried on for another 2 decades until Nestlé discontinued them in 2008. They did come back briefly around 2020 in small tubes, but that didn't last, gone again by 2024. Secret was a chocolate bar made by Rowntree's in the early 90s. It had this really unusual structure. Imagine thin strands of milk chocolate wrapped around a soft mousse filling, almost like a bird's nest made of chocolate. When you bit into it, those delicate strands would melt in your mouth. Then you'd hit that creamy center similar to a walnut whip filling. The wrapper was quite fancy, gold foil with cardboard backing to stop the bar from getting crushed. Those chocolate strands were incredibly fragile, you see. Despite being genuinely tasty and having that unique texture, Secret didn't last long. Rowntree's pulled it in the mid-90s because it was expensive to manufacture and just didn't sell well enough. It's one of those bars people still remember fondly. The Pyramint was Terry's attempt at giving their chocolate orange a minty rival, created in 1988. This one was shaped like an Egyptian pyramid made from dark chocolate, with a mint fondant filling sitting where the burial chamber would be. The whole thing was hollow, just a chocolate shell with that pale green minty center inside. You can imagine trying to bite into it must have been awkward with all those sharp pyramid edges poking you. Terry's must have realized this because in 1991 they switched it to a bar format, keeping pyramid-shaped segments but making it actually practical to eat. The Pyramint had a decent run through the 80s, but by the 90s demand was dropping and Terry's discontinued it. If you remember these from corner shops, you were probably relieved when they went to the bar format. Anglo Bubbly was one of those chunky pink disc-shaped bubblegums wrapped in a yellow and blue wrapper. Barrett launched it in 1932, but it really became a playground staple during the 1970s and 1990s as a penny sweet. You'd find it in corner shop pick-and-mix sections, each piece costing 1 penny. The gum was thick and quite hard when you first bit into it, with a pear flavour that was sweet and slightly fruity. What made Anglo Bubbly special was how good it was for blowing massive bubbles. The dense texture stretched thin and wide without snapping easily. You could blow competition-worthy bubbles if you chewed it long enough to soften it up. Kids had bubble-blowing contests with this one in the playground. As cheaper imports flooded the market in the 1980s, Anglo Bubbly gradually disappeared from most shops. Cabana was a Rowntree's chocolate bar that showed up in the 1990s trying to give you a tropical escape in confectionery form. The makeup was coconut, caramel, and whole cherries tucked inside a milk chocolate coating. You got shredded coconut for texture, sticky caramel for sweetness, and actual cherry chunks adding a fruit element to the mix. The wrapper was blue with the name printed in orange. Roundtree's pushed it with adverts using Deo, that banana boat song everyone knows, changing the lyrics to "Come Mr. Magic Man, make me a cabana." The tagline was tropical magic, really hammering the exotic vacation angle. The combination wasn't common, most bars stuck to safe flavor pairings. It didn't last though. By the early 1980s, Roundtree's had pulled it from shelves. Cadbury launched Amazon Raisin in 1970 as a follow-up to their Aztec bar. This one was aimed at kids and cost just 5 pence. The bar was raisins mixed into a chocolate yogurt coating, which sounds odd but seemed to work for a bit. It was seriously chewy, the kind of thing that would glue itself to your molars and give your jaw a proper workout. Cadbury marketed it with a Cockney-style jingle that went, "It's amazing what raisins can do," ending with a cheeky oi. You could taste the rum flavouring as well, though obviously there was no actual alcohol in it. Despite the catchy marketing and novelty, Amazon Raisin didn't stick around long. By 1978, it was gone from shelves, making it one of those brief 70s experiments people remember more for the adverts than the taste. Roundtree's Bar 6 came out in the 60s and was basically their answer to a bigger Kit Kat. This one had 6 chocolate-covered fingers joined together instead of 4, each containing a crispy wafer and hazelnut cream filling. The whole thing was wrapped in orange foil at first, though the wrapper later changed to purple. Kids loved it because you got more chocolate for your money compared to a standard Kit Kat, even if the taste wasn't quite as good. The hazelnut cream gave it a slightly different flavor from other wafer bars of the time. You'd often find these in vending machines at swimming baths and workplace canteens throughout the 70s. By the 80s, Roundtree's quietly discontinued it despite decent sales, and it became one of those chocolate bars people remember fondly but can never quite find again. Nutty came from Roundtree Macintosh in the 70s and 80s. It was a bit different from most chocolate bars because there wasn't actually any chocolate on it. Instead, you got a bar of fudge about 4 or 5 inches long, coated in soft caramel toffee. Halved unsalted peanuts were stuck all over the outside. The wrapper was purple with orange lettering. The packaging called it a nourishing bar of peanut fudge and caramel. The sticky toffee and fudgy center made it quite a heavy sweet, and the peanuts gave it texture without being salted or roasted too dark. It disappeared sometime in the 80s when Roundtree went through various corporate changes before becoming part of Nestlé. Like a lot of these discontinued bars, it got lost during the mergers and portfolio cuts. The Golden Cup was a chocolate bar that started under Macintoshes before becoming part of Roundtree Macintosh and eventually Nestlé. It consisted of milk chocolate segments filled with rich liquid caramel. It was marketed as a grown-up luxury version of Cadbury's caramel and cost a bit more than your average bar. The wrapper was white with an illustration of the bar itself. People remember breaking off those segments to get at the soft toffee center inside. The packaging featured bold yellow and red lettering that made it stand out on shop shelves. This one disappeared in the 1990s, leaving behind memories of that distinctive caramel filling. It was the sort of thing your mum might treat herself to rather than an everyday bar. Priced higher than most, it positioned itself as something a bit special for when you wanted more than the usual offerings. Milky Way crispy rolls turned up in the early 2000s as a lighter alternative to the classic bar. The concept was straightforward, a crispy wafer wrapped around that signature whipped Milky Way filling, all coated in smooth milk chocolate. Each roll came in at about 128 calories, which felt less heavy than working through a full chocolate bar. The texture combination worked well, with the wafer providing a satisfying crunch against the airy center. Mars discontinued them in 2022, and fans weren't having it at all. A petition demanding their return collected over 8,000 signatures. They briefly reappeared in Home Bargains, before Mars officially relaunched them in February 2025. Now you can find them in shops like Poundland, Spar, and Premier. Availability still varies depending on your location. Mint Cracknell was another one from Fry's chocolate range that showed up in the 1960s and 70s. This one had a mint-flavored honeycomb toffee center wrapped in dark chocolate. It came in two little squares sitting in a cardboard tray, much like Bounty bars used to have. The honeycomb inside was bright green and had that crunchy texture that shattered when you bit into it. The taste leaned heavily on the mint side, enough that some people reckoned it was like eating toothpaste. Plenty of others enjoyed that strong mint hit, though. The TV adverts had a skiing theme, all ice and snow and winter sports, which was fairly standard for mint chocolate in those days. The slogan went something like "Mint Cracknell takes you somewhere cool and green." It disappeared when Cadbury consolidated the Fry's brand and trimmed down the product line. Fry's 5 Center was one of those chocolate bars where the maths didn't quite add up in a delightfully confusing way. The bar had 7 segments, but only 5 flavors of fondant cream inside dark chocolate coating. Each segment contained orange, raspberry, lime, strawberry, or pineapple filling, which meant some segments shared flavors or got mixed combinations. The bar launched in 1934 as 5 Center and cost 4 pence. It stuck around for nearly 60 years before Fry's pulled it in 1992. The reason was straightforward. Manufacturing a bar with 5 different centers cost more than making one with a single flavor, and the profit margins weren't worth it as sales dropped.